On today's show, welcome back Jabari Smith Jr. as the Houston Rockets pick up a win against the Minnesota Timberwolves in their first game out of the All-Star break. Jalen Green going head-to-head with Anthony Edwards in this one and so much more. It's all coming up right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Oh man, is it good to have Jabari Smith Jr. back in the Houston Rockets lineup. What is up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Thursdays. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets, where the best way you can help us grow our show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Drop us a comment while you're there. Tell me how excited you were to see Jabari Smith Jr. back in action for your Houston Rockets, or just do a drive-by, say go Rockets. The comments help us out a ton. So much to get into from this Rockets 121-115 win against the Wolves. Obviously, got to talk about Jabari Smith Jr.'s return to the lineup. Jalen Green going head-to-head with Anthony Edwards. How they were able to slow down Ant defensively in this game, some of the schemes that they threw out there against him. We do got to talk about some of the ugly parts of this game, the turnovers in particular for Alperen and Sengun, 8 of them, Jalen Green, 4 of them. Jabari did have 5 of them, about the only bad thing that happened in his return. And then we're also going to talk about Amen Thompson really growing into that facilitator role that Ime Udoka has trusted him with in the absence of Fred VanVleet. A lot to get to in today's episode. Want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just go to FanDuel.com. And as always, thanks so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you so much for being an everydayer. Shout out to one of the best everydayers, James, my guy, Rockets Sci-Fi. I think that was it, James. I'm so sorry if I got the username wrong, but James, I appreciate you saying what's up at the Wolves game, and a couple more shout outs. Shout out to my guy Ike, Judson Merritt, and my boy Tej. All ran into all of you guys at the Wolves game. Super fun meeting up with, people that I've hung out with, obviously in person before, but also people that I haven't met before, Rockets Twitter people that are, it's always fun to kind of connect with people after knowing them online for a while and then meeting them in person for the first time. It's really cool. So also, Rockets get a good win post All-Star break. We haven't been able to do this in a minute, but
release the hounds.
Let's go ahead and release the hounds. Head on over to Locked On Wolves. Let them know Locked On Rockets sent you. This was a good win. This was a good win against a good Wolves team. And hopefully this is the start of this Rockets team getting back on track. And it absolutely starts in this one with the impact of one Jabari Smith Jr. So good in his return to action. Came off the bench in this one. First time coming off the bench for Jabari Smith Jr. since 9th grade, apparently. So it's been a minute since Jabari Smith Jr. was not in the starting lineup as an active participant in a basketball game. But didn't throw him off his rhythm or anything. Looked like he hadn't missed any time at all. 15 points on 5 of 9 shooting. He was 4 of 6 from downtown, 1 of 2 at the free throw line. Had 9 rebounds, couple assists, had a block in there. Did have 5 turnovers. It's about the only bad thing that happened for Jabari in this game. Did have 6 fouls as well. So he made sure to use every single one that he had. But we've talked about it before and how important Jabari is and was to this Houston Rockets defense. And you could really see his impact in a variety of ways in just this very first game back. First off, him coming off the bench actually wasn't the worst thing, because Sengun was in early foul trouble. And so Jabari got checked into the game super early because Sengun had 2 quick fouls and had to sit. And then in the third quarter, Dillon Brooks was in foul trouble again and had to sit early. So Jabari Smith Jr. got plenty of run in this game, 38 minutes played in this one. Only Amen Thompson and Jalen Green played more than Jabari did ultimately in this game. So even though he wasn't officially back in the starting lineup, he definitely played starters level minutes. And the reasoning that Ime Udoka gave for that was with Tari, Eason not playing the second night of back-to-backs, that kind of thing, and not going to be available against the Utah Jazz. He wanted to put Tari in the starting lineup in place of Fred and kind of make sure to maximize his output, I guess, in this game against the Wolves. So I can respect that kind of approach from Ime, and ultimately it worked out. But let's start with the offensive side of things for Jabari, because, I mean, he got off to a quick start. First off, the Rockets as a team got off to a huge start in this game, a 48-point first quarter. Led the Wolves by 10 after 48-38. Highest scoring quarter of the season for the Rockets, and Jabari Smith Jr. was a part of it. He had a quick 8 points in that first quarter, knocked down a couple triples, looked really good. Again, looks like he hasn't missed a beat. Usually there's some rust. Usually there's like an adjustment period when you're getting back from missing, a month or two of the NBA season, which, again, Jabari missed basically 2 months of action, more or less, or close to 2 months of action. And he didn't... No rust, didn't look like he was trying to like regain his, in-game stamina or get back into game shape or any of that. Didn't look like he had dead legs by the end of the showing or any of that. He really looked like he was locked in, and we know from practice the day before that he was just excited to get back out there. And to see the spacing that he provided offensively, the way that he was able to knock down shots at a high clip. And also there was a moment, I think in the second quarter, where the Wolves decided to try and throw out a zone against the Rockets, and it landed. Eventually the ball landed in Jabari Smith Jr.'s hands, and he was able to pop a three, and it just felt so good for the Rockets to have an answer for a zone defense when they've really struggled against teams deploying zone recently. And a big part of that's just, when guys are not knocking down shots, when you don't have a lethal, three-point shooter or two out there on the perimeter to make those teams pay for playing zone defense, then it becomes really hard to break that zone. It becomes really hard for teams to, for the Rockets to find a way to beat a zone defense. And so it was cool to see Jabari kind of can one of those too. But I think his presence was majorly felt on the defensive side of things here in this game. Just, again, being able to, be thrown in for Sengun when he was in foul trouble, or subbed in for Dillon Brooks on the wing when he was in foul trouble. Just that the positional versatility on display for Jabari in this game, guarding up and down the Wolves roster, being utilized to blitz Anthony Edwards quite a bit, which is one of the kind of the main defensive scheme that the Rockets deployed against Ant, was to really show two to the ball a lot, kind of forcing him off the 3-point line, forcing him into tough contested shots, trapping him, making him get rid of the basketball, and forcing Jaden McDaniels to try and beat you from the 3-point line. So a lot of good things happen with Jabari out there. And defensively, when you have a guy that's that big, 6'11", 7 feet tall, he's able to switch. He's able to switch onto a smaller player like Ant, or guard big and deal with the bigs down low like Naz Reid or Luka Garza. It's such a benefit to this Houston Rockets defense, and you could see it on different drives, on some of the traps, the length that Jabari Smith Jr. has. Again, Jabari is the only plus-size player that the Rockets have at any of their positions in the usual starting lineup. So, seeing him out there. And then the biggest thing to me, I think, in his return was just the defensive rebounding. Man, like, not only was he out there, forcing tough shots, a lot of good defensive possessions, good energy on the defensive side of the ball, but also just 9 rebounds, all of them coming on the defensive glass. That was an area where the Rockets really slipped in losing Jabari Smith Jr., not being able to be as aggressive on the glass and really closing out defensive possessions strong. And there were so many possessions where Jabari, using his length, using his size, doing the dirty work early, boxing out opposing players, was able to close out a good defensive possession by securing the rebound and making sure that the Rockets got a good end to a defensive stop. Whereas before, at times they were giving up offensive rebounds. They weren't closing out possessions strong. Rebounding has been kind of an issue without Jabari Smith Jr. in the lineup. So seeing him back out there, seeing him active, seeing him like he hadn't missed any time at all was really exciting. The only downside is I do think the Rockets, and this is just kind of it's been a recurring theme with Jabari, unfortunately, but I do feel like they kind of, they got away from him there later in the game. It would have been nice, with as well as he was shooting the basketball, to maybe see them, I guess, try to look for him more down the stretch. He only had one shot attempt in the fourth quarter, despite playing basically the entire fourth quarter, played, close to 12 minutes, 11 minutes, 51 seconds before ultimately fouling out. So I think that's one of those things where if Jabari has it going, if he's knocking down his shots, if he's got it going from long distance, I feel like Ime's got to call his number, run a couple sets for him, run a couple plays for him, see if you can kind of ride that hot hand a little bit, which, that's just the reality of the situation. Sometimes guys, certain guys on the team are going to fade into the background or not be, made a focus of the offense down the stretch. And that's been kind of a consistent theme with Jabari. But overall, a really encouraging game for him in his first game back. Finished as the second best plus minus on the team with plus 12 off the bench in his 38 minutes. Only Jalen Green had a better plus minus at plus 18 in this one. So excited to have Jabari Smith Jr. back. His impact was huge in this game, and it's going to continue to be that way moving forward. The big question is whether or not he will continue to come off the bench once Fred VanVleet is back, or will he be reinserted into the starting lineup? Ime Udoka did say he's got options. He's intrigued by the possibilities, so nothing concrete there yet. And still with no Fred VanVleet, it's still kind of TBD on what that starting lineup is ultimately going to look like. But coming up, got to talk about Jalen Green and Anthony Edwards going head-to-head. What we saw out of Jalen in this game, some big shots, some clutch performance late in this one, as well as how the Rockets were able to slow down Anthony Edwards. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by DoorDash. NBA fans, get ready. They swoosh, you save. Thanks to Dash Pass, every time a player drops 50 or more points in a game, you score a huge deal the very next day. It's simple. When any player scores 50 or more in a game during the 24-25 NBA regular season, Dash Pass members get 50% off an order, up to $10 off the next day from noon until midnight. There's so many different ways that you can take advantage of this offer. You can do a game day feast. You can have, satiate your late night cravings. Maybe you want lunch on the go the following day if you're at work, or just fuel your next watch party. If you're going to be watching the very next game, you get something off Dash Pass. Sign up for Dash Pass and be ready to save. When any player scores 50 or more in a game, Dash Pass members get 50% off an order the next day, up to $10 off. Just use promo code NBA50 from noon until midnight after a 50-point game on eligible orders at participating merchants. Must have an active Dash Pass account. Terms apply. Visit DoorDash to learn more. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, let's talk about Jalen Green going head-to-head with Anthony Edwards in this game, basically matching him point for point in this one. Jalen Green finished 35 points, 12 of 24 shooting, 5 of 11 from downtown, 6 of 9 from the charity stripe. Nice. He had 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, did have 4 turnovers. The 4 turnovers were about the only bad thing that happened in this game for Jalen. Maybe the 6 of 9 free throw shooting too, but just a phenomenal game for Jalen Green. And look, we know about post All-Star break Jalen Green. It's a very serious thing, and the league is about to be put on notice if he taps back into post All-Star break Jalen Green yet again this season. But then on the other side of the aisle, Anthony Edwards, 37 points, 13 of 32 shooting. So it took Ant 32 shots to get just 2 more points than Jalen. He only made 1 more shot than Jalen did the whole night. 4 of 14 from downtown, 7 of 10 at the free throw line. He had 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 block shot, and 3 turnovers. It was minus 11 in his 39 minutes of run. And look, this was a game where things were getting heated. Like, this is like an interesting kind of budding rivalry between the Timberwolves and the Rockets here, where these guys really do get up and they play well against each other, and these guys look forward to these. And I feel like there's a lot of trash talking going on between both sides. And Ant is a guy that loves to talk his talk, especially when things are going well. And then Jalen Green, definitely, there were points where Jalen and Ant were jawing in this game. Ant had a technical in this one. Jalen had a technical in this one, was frustrated with some of the no calls on the drives. Just there's a lot going back and forth. Emotions were running a little high at various points in this game, but you can also tell there's like an appreciation for the competitiveness, right? Seeing Jalen and Ant go back and forth against each other in this game. And it really felt like Jalen Green, minus the turnovers, which we'll talk about the turnovers because it was a problem for him, for Alpi, and for Jabari in this game. We'll talk about those in a moment. But really felt like Jaylen did a great job, finding little seams in traffic, getting downhill, getting to the rim. He had that huge layup, like with under 60 to go, like final possession of the game, within the final couple possessions of the game, drove it in, finished through contact, should have been an and one. And he had a lot of drives like that. He had a lot of, moments where he'd get all the way into the paint and absorb some contact and finish at the rim, or he had some drives that ended in no calls that unfortunately I think were classified or ruled as turnovers in this one. But for Jaylen, here's an interesting stat that I looked at. First off, the Rockets are now 9-0 when Jalen Green scores 30 or more this season. That's a phenomenal stat. The fact that when Jalen Green pops off, he's not doing it it's not like Jalen Green's popping off for 30 plus and the Rockets are losing, but Jalen's found a way that when he is playing high level basketball, when he's scoring at a high level, 30 plus a night or 30 plus a game, the Rockets are undefeated. They're that good. When Jalen Green is playing at his peak, when he's playing at his ceiling, Rockets are basically are essentially unbeatable this season. That's a fun stat. That's awesome. And that tracks. That we've mentioned that stat before here on the show, back when it was 6-0, 7-0. Every time Jalen Green goes 30 plus, good things happen for the Rockets. Here's a much more interesting stat though. The Rockets are 12-4 when Jalen Green simply attempts 6 or more free throws in a game this season. That to me goes to show you that one, Jalen Green continues to receive one of the worst whistles in the entire association. It is unbelievable how many times Jalen Green drives on a per game basis, gets hit, gets hacked, jumps into the air and gets knocked out of the air by a big or whatever, and doesn't receive a whistle. Or the number of times that Jalen Green winds up, on the floor under the opposing team's basket, and it's started a fast break going the other way or whatever because he didn't get the benefit of the doubt from the referees. Hopefully he starts getting the respect that he deserves on these drives, because when it's not Jalen, when Jalen Green makes 6 free throws, he literally just has to get to the free throw line. When he gets there 6 or more times this season, the Rockets are 12-4. That is an incredible win pace. And on top of that, in those games, Jalen Green is averaging just over 26 points per contest. So it really does bode well when Jalen is able to draw contact, get to the free throw line. I think it's honestly as simple as just him having some opportunities to see the ball go through the hoop that, it helps further unlock the rest of his game to where he has these, spectacular, truly elite, 1A superstar guard kind of performances. And honestly, you see games like this, and the sky is ultimately the limit. I mean, part of it is, maybe some of it still has to do with Jalen needing to get a little bit stronger, bulking up a little bit. But part of it is just the refs just don't like to blow the whistle when Jalen Green drives. And it sucks because he definitely, in this game, he had 9 free throw attempts. He could have easily had like 15 plus. He could have had a 40 piece in this game if he had gotten to the free throw line the number of times that he should have gotten to the free throw line based on contact, based on guys grabbing him, holding him, bumping him on drives, that kind of thing. But overall, just a huge game from Jalen. And more importantly here is, I think quite possibly the sequence of the game was Rockets were leading 106-105 with a little more than 6 minutes to go in the second quarter. Or sorry, not second quarter, I apologize, fourth quarter. And Jalen went to the free throw line and he missed 2 free throws back to back. Doesn't happen often. Jalen's a great free throw shooter. And that kind of felt like a moment where you're like, are the Rockets about to crumble? Like Jalen had a chance for 2, make it a 1 possession, like stretch out the lead to 3. Like, what are we doing here? And he came back down the very next possession, knocked down a midi jumper, came back down the next possession, knocked down a 3-pointer, giving the Rockets a little bit of breathing room. And he delivered down the stretch of this game. In the fourth quarter of this game, Jalen Green, 3 of 5 shooting, 1 of 2 from downtown. He was 2 of 4 at the free throw line. Yeah, I mentioned the 2 that he missed just a moment ago. But he had 9 points to help close out this game for the Rockets. And then Alperen Sengun as well. Al P, down the stretch of this game, hit some free throws, hit a tough shot, a tough fadeaway. Like that's your star players showing up to help win you the game. And that's exactly why Jalen and Sengun got the contract extensions this past offseason. This is how this Houston Rockets team is supposed to win games, on the backs of your young star players. Jalen Green helped drag this Rockets team over the finish line. He hit some big shots. Yes, he had the couple missed free throws, but hit some really big shots down the stretch in that fourth quarter. Came back down to the free throw line, hit some other big free throws a little bit later on after missing those first two. And then Sengun, again, despite the really rough night, despite the 8 turnover evening, which we'll talk about a little bit more here in just a second, a huge game from him, a huge finish for him, 24 points, 13 rebounds, 2 assists, 8 of 21 shooting, 8 of 10 at the free throw line. So Sengun, 80% from the free throw line, hitting some big free throws in this game. That's a really encouraging sign, seeing him knock down those free throws at such a high rate after seeing him struggling from the line for most of the season. Your star players showed up to close this one out, despite the fact that you had the big jump in the first quarter, and then Wolves kind of came back, made it a game in the second quarter, and then you went back and forth for the rest of the way. The Rockets were able to get just enough offensively out of their 2 stars to be able to put this one away and not have another disappointing meltdown late against the Wolves. No Anthony Edwards takeover this time. And a big part of the reason that there was no Anthony Edwards takeover was the defensive pressure and intensity that the Rockets were utilizing against him. We're going to talk about that here in just one moment, as well as the turnovers and Amen Thompson blossoming into a primary facilitator. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and the game tips off. The NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. Using FanDuel's live betting feature is the best because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether you're backing your team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3, never feel like you missed your chance to get in on the action. Plus, the app is so easy to use. When you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just go to FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, let's talk a little bit about how the Rockets were able to slow down Anthony Edwards in this one. Now, the defense on Ant in the first half wasn't great. He had 25 points on 8 of 15 shooting in the first half, was 6 of 8 at the free throw line. I felt like the Rockets fouled him way too much, sent him to the free throw line way too easily. Second half, though, things tightened up, and Ant got more and more exhausted as the game wore on. And Ime's used this strategy a lot with star players, just throwing different looks at them, throwing different primary defenders on them, whether it was Amen Thompson, whether it was Dillon Brooks, whether it was Jabari Smith Jr., Tari, Eason. There are so many capable defenders, Jalen Green even, with some good defensive possessions against Anthony Edwards in this game. It doesn't matter who it is. Ime has the utmost confidence in basically every player up and down the roster. And then when you couple that with the scheme of blitzing Ant, forcing the ball out of his hands, or forcing him into these really tough, ridiculous, contested fadeaway shots while he's driving. Now, he's a truly transcendent type player, so sometimes he can make those shots. But over the course of a 48-minute basketball game, you start to wear down, you start to get tired, and Ant definitely lost his legs in the second half, where he shot only just 5 of 17, only 1 of 7 from downtown. Rockets did a much better job not fouling him, putting him onto the free throw line. He only had 2 free throws in the second half of this game. He was 1 of 6 in the fourth quarter as well. So really, just he had nothing left in the tank down the stretch of this one. And the Rockets' defensive game plan of leaving Jaden McDaniels open from the three-point line worked beautifully. He was only 1 of 7 from downtown. And even though Naz Reid knocked down like a couple ridiculous like step back threes in this one where he like sauced up whoever was guarding him and then walked, just why does Naz Reid turn into like an all NBA caliber player when he plays against the Rockets? It's kind of ridiculous. But Naz Reid was only 2 of 6 from downtown. Again, Jaden McDaniels only 1 of 7. So they basically said, "Nah, we're gonna dare anybody but Ant to beat us." The one thing that I will highlight here that I was a little annoying to see, a little frustrating to see at times. And the Rockets kind of get into this pattern a little bit where they're sometimes a little too willing to switch certain matchups. Like, for example, Jalen McDaniels, 2 of 6 from downtown. Again, Jaden McDaniels only 1 of 7. So they basically said, "Nah, we're going to dare anybody but Ant to beat us." The one thing that I will highlight here that was a little annoying to see, a little frustrating to see at times. And the Rockets kind of get into this pattern a little bit where they're sometimes a little too willing to switch certain matchups. Like, for example, Amen Thompson is the best defender on Ant, period. He's the Rockets' best perimeter defender, and unless you need to initiate a switch, then I feel like there's times where the Rockets defense can get a little lazy and they just switch because it's like, oh, it's what we're supposed to do, rather than, oh, we're going to switch because it's the best thing to do in this moment, trying to slow down Ant, whether he's, trying to get to the strong side, whether he's trying to get downhill, he's coming off the screen, whatever. Switching with intentionality and purpose is a big thing for this Rockets defense. And to me, it's a gigantic mistake whenever they willingly switch Alperen Sengun onto a perimeter player, which doesn't happen a ton, thank goodness. But just because Alp can hold his own at times against perimeter guys doesn't mean you want him consistently matched up with Ant, which I don't think happened much, if at all, this game. But the bigger one is willingly switching Aaron Holiday onto Anthony Edwards at multiple points in this game. Just felt like a complete defensive letdown. Look, Aaron is not a bad defensive player. He's a vet. He's a smart guy. He's a capable defender. But when you have so many other capable wings out there, Jabari, Tari, Dillon, Amen, hell, even Jalen has a little bit more size, and the athletic ability to kind of stay, keep up with Ant or recover if he beats him on a drive. Like, it just willingly letting Aaron Holiday switch on to Anthony Edwards feels like asking for Ant to burn you at that point. And I get that that's kind of the Rockets defensive scheme, and that Ime has to show, kind of share that confidence and instill that confidence in all his players, 1 through 4 that are out there, switching the defense around and all that stuff. But it just feels like that's some, either some laziness by the coaching staff or just a miscalculation by the coaching staff. That was the one thing that I really didn't like about the Rockets defensive scheme on Ant in this game. But other than that, it worked out pretty well. So, you see 37 points, you're like, did it work well? And it's like, well, yeah, if you take 32 shots to get to 37 points, you did a really good job of slowing down the opposing team's star player. Because if you could force a star player into an inefficient night, that is a success. Doesn't matter how many points they put up. If they do it inefficiently, then I think you chalk that up as a win, because at the end of the day, star players are going to get theirs. You just want to make them work for it. And the Rockets absolutely made Ant work for it in this game, to the point where he didn't have anything left in the tank down the stretch. And that was a win for Houston. So loved what we saw defensively against Ant for most of this contest. One of the things that we didn't love in this game were all the turnovers, man. My goodness. Alp was working on a triple-double, and not the good kind. Rockets had 20 turnovers in this game. Again, Jalen, Sengun, and Jabari accounting for 17 of those 20 turnovers, to the tune of 26 points for the Wolves. Just absurd. They did a horrendous job taking care of the basketball in this one. In particular, Alp, right? There was a lot of moments in this game where Alp would drive and get poke checked on a drive, or spin directly into 2 or 3 defenders, and this was like the one that really bothered me the most, was the times that he would catch the ball down low, either on an offensive rebound or, on the roll from one of his guards or primary ball handlers. And Alp likes to bring the ball down to his belly a lot. Like, he brings it down and he'll try like that little kind of like crab dribble or power dribble to like set up his move to go back up. And I really wish that the coaching staff and that Alp would just learn to just keep the ball up. If you keep the ball up high, those guards and wings that are floating around you, they can't swipe down at it and try and knock it away from you, which is what feels like happens a lot with Alp now. And so that one was really bothersome, the number of times that he just got stripped trying to go up with it because he brought the ball back down to his chest or to his belly before trying to go back up with it on an offensive rebound or on a roll to the rim, those kinds of things. And also the offensive fouls. Alp was whistled for, I want to say, if I'm not mistaken, 3 different moving screens. And I say moving screens because, unfortunately, it's kind of like flavor of the day whether NBA officials decide that they want to call things very tightly and call every moving screen, or if they want to just let players get away with it, because the screens that Alp was setting in this game, half the time are considered normal screens. But I will say that one thing that did stand out is, I don't know what it is in particular, but I feel like Alp's screens maybe aren't quite as effective as they were last season too, is the other thing. screening is such a big part of being able to open up your teammates and create that initial mismatch or advantage for the ball handler. And if you're not doing a good job setting a hard, strong screen to be able to free up your teammate, then in turn, it's going to be harder for you to then roll to the basket or, get the pass on the short roll and be in an advantageous position to do something. So I don't know what it really is, but in this game, the referees in particular were honed in on those offensive fouls. Jabari Smith Jr. got whistled for one or two of them, I believe, as well. So it's one of those things, too, where the players themselves, the coaching staff, they need to recognize in a given game, oh, the refs are calling it tighter. So, hey, LP, when you go to set your screens, don't drag your hips, right? Don't stick your knee out. Don't stick your shoulder out. Like, you've got to be set on those screens. Otherwise, you're going to continue to get whistled for it, right? And the fact that they weren't able to really, I guess, address that at any point in this game, and the fact that it kept happening repeatedly is a little frustrating at the end of the day. But the turnovers, I don't want to say you live with them, because you really don't. Like, so many of them, I think, were not really unforced turnovers. You give some credit to the Wolves defense, but the Rockets just need to take better care of the ball. It's really that simple. Like, some of the drives where Jalen Green would drive in, like, there was, to be fair, look, I understand Jalen's frustration about the no calls and the lack of free throw attempts on drives where he felt like he received contact, but he had one just before halftime where he drove in and finished through contact, made the shot, but didn't get the end one. And he was like barking at the officials all the way down. And then on the very next drive, he drove in again on Naz Reid and drove the ball in, trying to like force the ref to blow the whistle. And it led to what was either classified as a turnover or a missed shot. It was a bad drive. It was him driving into multiple defenders in traffic, no advantage created, didn't use any pace or tempo to try and like create separation from Naz Reid, just drove straight into a bigger defender because he was angry and frustrated with the officiating. And then the very next possession down, walked up and like fired a three within 5 seconds because he was looking for like an FU kind of response shot because he was angry after that drive with no call. And then he wound up making like 2 or 3 silly plays in a row. So I understand the officiating is frustrating, but that's one of those moments where it's like, you can't let the officials get inside your head. You can't let what the officials are doing. You just got to play your game. And Jaylen was playing a phenomenal game outside of like that little pocket where he got a little frustrated with the officiating. And then it ultimately resulted in him getting a technical foul that the Wolves wound up shooting to start the third quarter. So definitely some emotions kind of boiling over there, but he kept himself in check and he still closed out the game strong, which is exactly what the Rockets need him to ultimately do. But got to cut down on the turnovers, especially from Sengun, but across the board, Sengun, Jalen, Jabari. It's kind of a miracle that they won with that many turnovers. And I think this keeps the streak going of the Rockets when they have 20 or more turnovers are still undefeated, which is such a weird. I think they're up to like either 7-0 or 8-0 now when they have 20 or more turnovers, which at this point, maybe just start kicking the ball into the stands a few times a game so that you can get up to 20, because something good is happening, I guess, when they do turn the ball over. I really don't know what it is. But before we wrap this thing up, I just want to highlight here really quickly, Amen Thompson. Kind of a quiet night for Amen, but a quiet night for Amen. He's still stuffing the stat sheet. 17 points, 10 rebounds, 6 assists, 1 steal, 3 blocks. And 0 turnover. So in a game that was just absolutely marred by the Rockets' turnover woes, Amen Thompson, 6 dimes, 0 turnovers, really blossoming into a comfortable primary initiator of the offense. Amen had a play in the first half where he received a screen. I want to say it was from Jabari, if I'm not mistaken. It might have been Sengun. I'm trying to remember the play. I just know how it resulted. And it was basically Amen Thompson gets the screen from somebody, drives into the paint, like towards the middle of the paint, and that forces the help defender to come off of the strong side wing, which was guarding Dillon Brooks. And Amen, with his size, with his height, with his athleticism, he elevated and he knew exactly where that help defender came from. And then he whipped the pass out to Dillon Brooks and he fired up a 3 immediately. And it was just like such a simple, beautifully executed drive and kick. And that's what Amen Thompson can do. And his drive and kick game has really taken off as of late. And when the Rockets are knocking down shots at the clip that they were knocking them down in this game, 50% from downtown, 13 of 26 from the 3-point line, it looks even better because the Rockets have plenty of guys who can create these opportunities up and down the roster, right? Sengun creates and generates plenty of wide open threes for his teammates. Jalen Green generates plenty of wide open shots for his teammates. Amen Thompson does it as well. It's just about capitalizing on him. So seeing Amen Thompson, some of the passes that he had on display in this game, the court vision, the, really just taking care of the basketball at the end of the day, still with no Fred VanVleet in the lineup. So Jalen Green was leaned on very heavily as the Rockets' primary initiator. And then in the non-Jalen minutes, when he wasn't out there, Amen Thompson was initiating a lot of the Houston Rockets offense. So that continued trust and belief from the coaching staff has gone a long way. And Amen Thompson really has, kind of started to level up as far as just his comfortability handling the rock, initiating offense, finding guys up and down the floor, getting other guys involved. The next step for him is going to be really learning that balance of how do I decide when I want to, quote unquote, get mine, when I want to drive and attack and try to look to score, versus looking to incorporate my teammates. And that's always going to be a massive kind of learning curve for guys who have the ball in their hands a lot, who have kind of the role within the offense to make those decisions, to be dynamic, whether they're going to be a go-to scorer or whether they're trying to get their teammates involved. It's always really difficult for those players to decide and to become comfortable with when they're scoring, when they're facilitating. And so that's going to be kind of the next big thing, the big hurdle for Amen Thompson down the line at some point in his career. But with that, I think I covered every major point that I wanted to hit on from this game. I want your thoughts from this game. Let us know in the YouTube comments. How exciting was it to have Jabari Smith Jr. back? What about seeing Jalen Green go head-to-head against Anthony Edwards? Let me know all your thoughts in the YouTube comments. Remember, the best way to help us grow our show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform if you're choosing. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Drop the comments while you're there. Subscribe to the daily Locked on Rockets newsletter. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked on Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.